Okay, perfect. Why don't we go ahead and get started? So thank you for everyone that is able to join today. It's a pleasure having you here and being part of our fireside chat. I hope you can appreciate us being remote today, but we have all tried to have some kind of fireside scene behind us, just for a little bit of fun. So without further ado, I would love to do a quick round of introductions. So for anyone that is interested, my name is Katie Collins. I have the pleasure of working at Threekit. I am not going to be a speaker today, but I'm going to be helping to facilitate the conversation between these lovely two panelists. So I'm actually going to hand over to Todd. Would you like to do a quick introduction on yourself, Todd?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Todd Franiak. I'm the Senior Director of Services at Threekit. Thank you. I'll reiterate what Katie said. Thank you for joining. And I hope what you get today is informative and leaves you with something to think about as we go through some of our topics of conversation. My background is in configuration tools and CPQ, and I've been with Threekit now going on 2 years, working in 3D visualization.
Perfect. Thank you, Todd. And over to Pete at Space48.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Katie. So yeah, I'm Pete Robertshaw. I have been at Space48 for just about 18 months now. I'm actually an ex-retailer myself. I was at an online retailer called Better Bathrooms for only 14 years as the head of e-commerce and head of IT. So been on quite a journey in my retail career. And I now work at Space48 as a digital commerce consultant, looking out for kind of great tech that can help solve a lot of our clients' challenges, look at how we can kind of help them really grow the business online. So it's just kind of using a bit of my experience and looking at the great tech that's out there to help our customers do really well.
Perfect, wonderful. And for all attendees, if you would love to ask questions as we go, you're very welcome to. Feel free to ask it either in the Q&A box or in the chat box, and I'll try and pick those up as we go along. So please try and make it as interactive as possible. So Pete, I guess before we get started on the topic at hand, all around e-commerce strategy, perhaps you might like to spend just a couple of words around our type of partnership together and how you see, our development together over time. I know it's a relatively new partnership, but it would be great to just hear from yourself about the partnership that we have and what you foresee coming out in the future.
Yeah, sure. I think when I came to Space48, I kind of looked, I managed all the sort of technology partnerships we have, and I looked and we had a kind of bit of a big gap in sort of the visualization space. Like coming from a retailer myself, especially the bathroom industry, one challenge we always had was kind of creating like giving our customers the in-store experience online. And we'd had a gap from a Space48 perspective in terms of technology in that respect. And I came across you guys, Threekit, about a year ago now, and was really impressed with the technology that you guys had to offer and the challenges that it can solve, especially from an efficiency point of view and the scalability point of view. So it's definitely a technology it's here now, but it's definitely that it's becoming adopted, especially like AR has been adopted more and more as I see it. I think you guys solve a massive challenge for a lot of retailers. And again, for me, a lot of our retailers, especially given the current climate, want to really try and replicate, the offline experience online. And it's just, you guys have the kind of, I guess, the product to do that. And the technology is just, it's far above what I've seen elsewhere. And again, from the support perspective, it's been great to partner with you guys. But it just offers our customers something different and more than what their competitors are currently doing.
Wonderful, thank you. And I guess to counteract that, from our perspective, we look to partner with Space48 as experts within the e-commerce and the digital arena. So we would provide a small piece of the pie, well maybe a larger piece of the pie as we like to think of it as Threekit, but I'm sure Pete will be able to cover more of what they cover more broadly from a digital perspective. So hopefully from both sides of the table we're going to be providing context not only in a niche area but also from a more broad perspective for all of the attendees today. So with that being said, let's get everything started. So Pete, I'm probably going to spin this over to you to start off with, but I would love to get your perspective on, things have actually been changing quite a lot over the past year. Obviously, the current climate has impacted that somewhat. But I personally believe that changes were happening pre the pandemic as well. From your perspective, what is shifted in terms of digital strategies from the companies that you're supporting?
I guess the first thing is to say is that you're right. Before pre-pandemic, things were starting to change already. I think a lot of our clients over the last sort of 6 months, 7, 8 months now, in this year, have definitely been accelerating their digital strategies. Especially rather pressing pause on them, as I know a lot of retailers have been doing over the last couple of months because of uncertainty. A lot of our clients have just been ramping up and pressing the go button. We've seen some tremendous growth periods for a lot of our clients over the last few months. I guess as they start to see a lot of their customers move away from buying on the high street to being forced in essence to buy online. I think the stores closed for such a long period of time has made retailers look more at the digital strategy. And maybe bringing some forward, some of the ideas they've maybe shelved maybe for a few months, or seeing things as like a second half of the year project, they now brought right forward because they really see the importance of it. But I think the businesses that I've spoken to that have done really well so far this year were actually ones that were really pretty prepared pre-COVID anyway. They were kind of prepared, something like this would to come along because the digital strategy were already really on point, and they'd really invested heavily in the kind of customer experience. And I think most of the businesses we're speaking to now are now really looking to preparing for peak. So, November, December times, they've been doing that for the last couple of months anyway. It's not stopped them, the pandemic as such, but we try and educate our customers continue about the customer experience. And I think the ones, again, that have done really well, and we can share some examples later on, are the ones that have been doing this now for the last maybe 2-3 years. But there's certain businesses we work with, again, have realised they need to kind of put the foot on the pedal now and start accelerating forward, and we are seeing a lot more of that as well.
Okay. So that's interesting. The 3 key things that I picked up on there are customer experience, project preparation, and organizations that have preparation around certain seasonality already in mind. So maybe if we shift towards preparation to get things started. So, what type of components would go into preparing for a new digital strategy? Because there can be a number of different technologies, a number of different ways to approach it, and of course you haven't just got digital. You've also got front end and back end, wider architecture to consider. So in your experience, Pete, perhaps we start off with yourself. What would you say are the key things to think about when preparing for this type of program?
Actually, one of the things, and part of my background from being an IT mod, I suppose, in my previous life, is looking at operational challenges that actual digital strategy can pose, especially for like a lot of businesses that are now starting to take the business digital or ramp it up. To start transacting online overnight, if you haven't done it before, it poses internal challenge in the business. But like we've seen a lot of B2B businesses recently going D2C, but they're not actually set up to deal with like the end customer. They're used to going through distributors or wholesalers or whatever, but now they're starting to deal direct. It's like having challenges around, okay, how do they handle returns and the kind of customer service inquiries they're going to get? How do they handle refunds and damaged products? How do they change, handle the logistical demands and the changes? Instead of sending out a pallet of goods now, how do they then change their strategy to sending out just individual parcels? And even then, even B2C, like how do they, cope with kind of increases in volume? There's a lot of prep and thought that needs to go into this. We've seen a lot of businesses who will start investing in digital, or they've already maybe got a presence online, or start bringing additional technology into the mix, but actually they haven't got the resource in house to actually manage it. So resource planning is a huge part of embarking on a digital strategy, making sure you've got the teams in house to back it up. Ideally, digital strategy and investing in digital should produce efficiencies within the business, but actually getting up and running can, if it takes off well, you're going to need the back end to support that as well. I think the one thing I will say is that digital strategy can be the catalyst for change for the rest of the business. Like I'm working with a business at the moment who are kind of, again, really ramping up their kind of online presence. And it's giving them an opportunity to look at their legacy processes that they've had in the business for a long, long time. And now a lot are starting to look at kind of what other benefits they can get out of being, trading digitally. And it's giving them a good chance to go and look at the whole business and change it and improve for the better.
No, that's very, very interesting. And, you know, I've picked up on another trend that you very politely mentioned as well, around what I see is becoming more of a gray area of B2B and B2C. You know, B2B organizations are now kind of almost expecting that B2C customer experience. And that is something that we're seeing quite a lot of, certainly on our side. Todd, you've kept very quiet up till now. What is your perspective
Yeah, I was waiting my turn.
Preparation around this.
Exactly as Pete said, and you know, when a company is preparing for this type of change, it's going to be different than the other changes that you've done in the past, right? Like companies that have never really had a great online selling presence are now starting to venture into this area. So, you know, before doing so, you know, what I've seen is companies preparing properly are identifying where new gaps are or where new bottlenecks are, because they know where their old bottlenecks are. They know where the intelligence lies within the company. But if you're about to change your selling strategy, you also have to change your investigation strategy. You know, where are these problems within my organization, so that when I move to an online selling approach, I know where I need more resources, like Pete was talking about. I know where I need to add more or better rules of engagement and internally. So, you know, whenever I'm preparing a customer for an implementation, you know, I try to explain to them, you know, identify these operating silos early, identify these swivel chair areas, so that way you can start to get that intelligence out and into your online selling experience.
Fantastic. Wonderful. And I guess perhaps the flip side of that is more around, you know, in all of the, you know, preparation, there can often be things that could go wrong along the journey. And in both of your expertise and your vast experience that you've had, what would you say would be, you know, one or two tips each, perhaps around, you know, key things for, you know, our guests to bear in mind, of things that they should be mindful of and try to avoid as much as possible?
I'll go first.
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
Okay, I'll go. I think that one thing we always look at, especially when we're starting on a new project like this or any kind of digital project, is how important discovery is. It's a word that kind of gets thrown around a lot, but we've embarked on so many projects in the past where customers have not necessarily wanted to go ahead and spend a lot of time in discovery with us and just going to get cracking it. But it's so important. If I think back to the recent projects we've worked on, where we spent a lot of time up front, you know, maybe weeks doing discovery with the client, the end result is always so much better. So actually understanding is what we're tackling in terms of the project, setting expectations right from the beginning, not just for the actual e-commerce team that we might be dealing with, but actually for the wider business. So involving all the stakeholders in the business has always been really important, and getting their buy-in and looking at how this change or through it, or the investment they're going to be making is going to affect, you know, the rest of the team in the business. And that's one thing I definitely look at. So, you know, as an agency, we spend a lot of time in discovery with our clients, and it does pay dividends. And again, it can save time and money later down the line for the client. I think the other big thing I'd say is that always, especially with trading already, listen to what your users are telling you. Again, we come across a lot of businesses that just kind of make decisions based on feelings. But at Space48, we really push listening to what your users are telling you. Now, whether that's doing some you kind of user research or actually getting users to kind of test the technology that you're kind of looking to use, user feedback is so important. And it's when you take the blinkers off, it's surprising kind of the results and the feedback you will actually get. And again, we've seen some great changes and implemented some great features to our site based on what our users are telling us. And actually, a lot of that user research actually feeds into the discovery process as well. But they're the two big things that I would say that you've got to look at when you're doing a new digital project.
Perfect. That's great advice. And Todd, over to you.
Yeah, I unfortunately missed the question a bit because of some connection issues, but I want to kind of piggyback on what Pete said about getting the user feedback. You know, that problem starts typically when someone tries to proxy for a user. They think they know what the users want. And usually if someone, you know, or someone or a team, an internal team is doing that, that's really where that disconnection starts to happen. It may work early on, but as the scope or as the approach grows and grows and grows, you're going to start to lose connection with those users. So getting them in early, letting them see, actually listening to their feedback, even as off the wall as it may be, is really what kind of keeps that connection to that end user base and gives them what they actually need, as opposed to what you think they might want.
Brilliant. Thank you both. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and focus now on customer experience. So in my opinion, customer experience can mean so many different things, and it can, actually be centered on so many different parts of the customer experience journey. Is it from the website? Is it from communication with marketing? Is it through communication with sales? Is it from the end product? There's lots and lots of different components that can, in its entirety, make up a customer experience overall. But I guess flipping it on its head and focusing just on the digital strategy of customer experience, what would you say are the key components for having a higher customer experience journey, and what are the key components around monitoring that success or that journey? Perhaps Todd, you might like to go first.
Yeah, sure. This is one of those things where it's funny when I'm working with clients to start, their initial approach on the customer experience is they want to make sure their business rules are intact. They want to make sure that, they have all of the processes in place. But the funny thing about it is, my customers tend to get a little shy when they're describing their vision to me when it comes to this idea that, what they really want to do is make the experience fun and cool for their users, right? It's something that, they kind of shy away from when talking about it. But really, it's a big part of that online buying experience, right? And companies that are new to selling in this fashion are a bit embarrassed about it. But the fact is, there's nothing embarrassing about it. There's nothing you should shy away from, because for us, for Threekit, making a client's products look great and feel real and have this very personalized, dynamic, interactive customer experience is what draws the user in. And it's a huge part of what we do and why we do it. And, it's that's what's changing the game in the online experience. So it's always funny. I see it every time, the little glint in their eye that they want to make everything shiny and fast and cool. And the truth is, come out and say it, because we want to hear your ideas. We want to hear how you think this can really, improve that buying experience.
Great, and I'm going to come on to that personalized approach very shortly. But before I do, Pete, from your perspective, what is your perspective of customer experience and how it is changing, how it is adapting into the new digital marketplace?
I guess I'm quite a good position to answer this, being part of a CX team within Space48. We don't just refer to it as customer experience, we refer to it as commerce experience. And for us, it's such a wide range in terms of what it covers. So it starts from acquisition all the way through to fulfillment. And I think one thing that gets forgotten about often is, you can offer the greatest experience on the website. You can have a great site search. The site can be really fast. You can have personalized content, all that kind of great stuff. But actually, that's nice while the customer's actually buying. But actually, what happens after the buy button? Fulfillment's a really important point. Making sure they're good to get to the customer on time. You communicating to them properly all the way through the journey. Through the warehouse, are you communicating to customers about where the picking of the orders up to? Do you have the items in stock? Are you communicating when items are due back in stock? For me, it's customer experience. The commerce experience isn't just about the transition on the actual e-commerce platform. It's what goes on afterwards as well, especially from retention. And I think you'll start to see now that more businesses are focusing much more on the stuff that goes on after the buy button, because retention is going to be so important now, especially with new businesses coming online. These traditional kind of your local butcher shop around the corner, or your local fishmongers or grocery store, whatever it is, now wanting to get online because they can't trust people coming into the store. There's going to be so much more competition now. So retention and offering that great experience is going to be so important. And I guess, technology, what you guys offer, plays a major part in that, part of the actual online on-site journey, there's other great tools out there that sit, after the fact, after the purchase has been made, that again are really equally important. And don't get me wrong, I love all the shiny stuff that's really fun, and I've actually got some good examples of it. But for me, it's the whole end-to-end journey to make sure that retention strategy is there.
Mm-hmm. And what would your key recommendations be for companies that are going to be new to coming into that world? So being able to easily retain customers, and it's, it goes kind of into that logistics part of things. It goes into being able to ship orders or ship goods very promptly, following up in a support, manner as well. So what are the key things that you can share in terms of getting prepared around that part if companies are not as familiar with it today?
I think there is some great technology you can leverage out there that'll help customers. Again, back when I was a retailer, there's even go back 2 years ago, there's a lot of technology exists now that would really have helped us out from a communication perspective of our customers, from a fulfillment perspective. I don't know, for example, let's say you're going to be a merchant that's going to be getting live on, say, Shopify Plus, and you can get started pretty quickly. There's so many great bits of technology apps out there that can really help and take the strain away, especially, your local fishermen, your local grocers or butchers or whatever it may be, as an example. They're not set up to maybe do deliveries, they're not set up to be fulfillment. They're there to basically sell their product and get it online. They don't want the headache of having to deal with the kind of the back end processes as such. So again, automation's a huge thing that I really recommend, and any platform that can offer that, we try and look to automate as much as possible, taking away the strain from the actual person that's doing the selling. A lot of retailers just want to get online and sell the products. They don't want to say, don't deal with the headache of it, unless you've got like a big e-commerce team or an IT team in house. The things that most retailers do well is sell goods, and know how to position them, know how to promote them really well, tell the story. So again, for me, the things to kind of prepare for and look at is what's out there that can really help you, you kind of get online and not just start selling, but actually, do the back end logistical stuff as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And it's interesting you mentioned there about kind of in-store versus online experiences. Are you seeing, I've spoken to several, clients over the last few months where they're seeing a shift in terms of, the way in which the clients are approaching them, in terms of, the dynamic to get towards 100% is changing from in-store versus online. What kind of trends are you seeing in the current climate, and what trends do you foresee in terms of online versus in-store experiences?
We know the kind of state that the high street wasn't in a particularly great state before this sort of kind of COVID and the pandemic hit. I'd love to see it get back to the way it was. I think there's a lot of challenges. I think there's a potential now that a lot more retailers could, in theory, open up, because rents and rates, I'm pretty sure, are going to be coming down because people want to fill these empty spaces and shop spaces now. But I think that this is a massive opportunity now for more retailers to get online and sell the products. Again, I mentioned about Shopify Plus or kind of other platforms, to BigCommerce, for example, as well. It's now easily accessible to get clients online. We got a client live on a platform just in under 6 weeks a few weeks ago, and it was really, really successful project. He hadn't really considered about doing it before. So I think in terms of what shift do I see, I said, but back when I was in university, like 20 years ago, that I thought that the high street would be dead in 10 years. I didn't quite get it right. I'm maybe about 5 or 10 years off it. But I do think there's certain, again, even if clothing retailers now, it's so easy now to go and buy products online and return them when they don't fit. And it's a bit more difficult for kind of like more considered products. Like, if you're going to buy a bathroom, you're going to go buy a TV and that kind of thing. I also think there's certain elements of that people want to actually go out and physically view the products. But again, technology that's coming in now, like AR, for example, I'm a huge advocate of AR. Like, being able to view what a bath's going to look like in your room, or the bed, the bed behind me I've got here, I viewed that using a bit of AR before I bought it to make sure it fit. People go and buying prams. How's the pram going to look in the back of your car? Well, if you think about the actual, baby stores that are actually out there now, apart from the independents, the big kind of online baby stores are all kind of disappearing. So how do you go and test out a pram now before you buy it? It's difficult. So I think there's going to be a lot more shift of where there's that traditional look, and you want to go look up and touch and feel a product. You can now do that online a little bit more through sort of the technology that's out there.
Brilliant. And that's a really nice directional change, maybe for Todd to take over around providing that personalized experience, providing an immersive experience for customers. So Todd, what are you seeing in terms of trends around that personalization? What type of experiences are you seeing as popular that are coming up?
Pete mentioned it. Certainly augmented reality is very popular right now. And, you know, it goes even beyond furniture. You know, I mean, that's the thing, is like furniture is certainly popular, right? See how something looks in your space, see how a new bathroom cabinet looks, see how, you know, a quartz or a granite tabletop matches with your color scheme. But we're seeing even, it's taking it even further, where we're seeing construction companies, for example, create their lift trucks or their cranes in 3D, turn them into augmented reality. So the folks that are using these tools can quite literally walk into this giant machine or truck and see the sight lines, see how it would look in terms of when they're driving it, or how where the shift is, where the pedals are, and things like that. So it's even going beyond just the cosmetic portion, because that is certainly quite huge. The personalization aspect, jewelry companies showing you how you can personally engrave with your own signature and your own handwriting. It's really kind of an interesting time, because almost anything out there can be personalized at this point in time, and we're seeing new ways to use it with augmented reality in 3D. So yeah, those are a few. I mean, I could probably go on. You know, Pete mentioned the idea of buying clothes and returning it if it doesn't fit. Well, guess what's coming? Absolutely bespoke clothes, right? Something with your sizes, your fabrics, your textures chosen, and maybe one day even wearables. You know, so that's where things are trending. And you know, it's really any industry, any marketplace, there's a way to use it.
Sounds incredibly exciting. So I guess maybe shifting gear into, you mentioned that there are some more complex use cases perhaps than others. So what would you say in your experience to date, and maybe Todd, you can start first. What is the more complex use case that you've come across, and you know, maybe share the success of that program, as well as maybe some of the tips and tricks of learnings along that way as well?
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to configuration, 3D visualization, and kind of the merging of the two, I would say the most complex use case is something that's nested or layered, or even location based. So, you know, there's the approach to selling of engineered to order is very common in the manufacturing industry, but truly engineered to order can be anything that is bespoke, right? Like you could consider a custom suit to be an actual engineered to order product. When you get into that type of layering, that's where things become custom, because it's basically complexity within a complexity. You know, I've worked on projects that have 7 layers of nested configuration, you know, but that's not something we're going to see in the public. You know, that's something that's behind the scenes. A public consumer will probably, they wouldn't have tolerance for something that deep, but certainly 1 or 2 layers deep would happen. For example, I'm working with a client now that's doing personalized in-home gyms. So build your own gym in 3D, and it's really great. And what I'm seeing is a complexity level of how many, what weight set do you want, and where do you want to put it, and how do you want to design it in your room? So it's essentially a combination of a nested configuration with location based. What does it look like on my wall? What does it look like on my floor? And where can I put it? And so it's really kind of an interesting complexity, and, you know, but it's something that, you know, using 3D, using these tools that we have, we can build it into an easy buying experience, despite the fact that it has a level of logic and complexity behind it.
And presumably with that, there comes to a point of being able to easily scale. So once you have something, you know, set up, and you've got those, you know, initial layers set up, there must be some kind of path to being able to easily scale for future proofing.
Yeah, layered configuration is all about scale. Is once you have the layers set up, you don't have to re-render or rebuild the base part to begin with. Now, if you have a new layer come in, you're literally adding just the smaller layer to ease the complexity for the future.
Brilliant. Wonderful. And I guess, Pete, from your perspective, obviously working on slightly different types of projects, but all kind of interconnected into the wider program. What would you say has been, a complex program that you've or project that you've worked on?
Working with a client at the moment who they sell beds online. They've got various different types of configurations for, like, the type of headboards, and then even the bed itself, you can get it in various drawer configurations, and you can obviously get the different size. And the challenge that they've got is physically being able to get the photography done for the basically thousands of combinations they can possibly have. That is quite a complex use case, and to try and build that into an e-commerce platform, it's pretty, well, you wouldn't do unless you built it bespoke. It's proven very challenging, how they're going to go about and how they represent it, because they don't want to be spending days and days and days, months of the year just taking photographs of those different products, only then 6 months later for the catalog to change and then bring new ranges in. So, like, configurations around it's mainly, we kind of specialize in the home and garden market, and we see a lot of people doing custom sofa builders and that kind of stuff. And again, the variations you can get are quite substantial, and it always requires a bit of a bespoke solution, or and it's something that you can't go and just buy off the shelf generally anyway. It requires quite a bit of time to invest. But again, there's technology out there, I guess, a bit like what you guys can do to help kind of scale that. We are seeing a lot more business invest in like CGI and the 3D modeling that you guys do to try and get around that whole scalability of these products. Because again, I've talked about it before, people want to have that in-store experience online. If you might want to walk into a bathroom showroom, you can see the variation of the bath that you want, but then trying to replicate that online is quite difficult, or if again, to scale it. So again, this is where the kind of technology comes in, especially whether it's CGI or 3D, whatever it is, to be able to go and pick the exact configuration you want. That's usually a pretty tough challenge to get over. And it's something, but again, I think customers want it now. They want more people are going to be buying online. They want that experience and to know exactly how they're going to get it. Todd touched on the personalization aspect before. You want to see how the engraving is going to look on a particular thing you're going to purchase. I've seen some really bad implementations of that, but it's something that customers really, really want. Especially spending quite a lot of cash on high ticket items. It's they want they don't want to spend £300 or £400 on an engraving of a product and not quite sure how it's going to end up looking. So the demands of the customer are really high nowadays, and the technology needs to be there to support it.
Interesting. Wonderful. And just a little reminder for all attendees, if you did want to ask any questions, you're very welcome to do so in the Q&A chat box. But until we get a few questions coming in, let's continue. So in terms of, I guess the next, the year ahead or the next few years ahead, there's quite a lot that's being juggled around. I would say a lot of businesses are having to shift their priorities, change their strategies. I guess, Pete, perhaps from your perspective, what do you foresee over perhaps the next 3 years in terms of trends that you're seeing or conversations that you're having with organizations about the shift in strategy within the organization?
I think I touched on this a little bit before. Definitely in terms of the shift that's going on, that's what we're seeing in terms of the kind of inquiries we're seeing through. There's definitely a lot more B2B going D2C. It's just a fact. Like, we're probably getting as many B2B to kind of D2C inquiries now than we do kind of sort of standard retail. It's just because I think B2B retailers realize they can't rely on the high street anymore. Again, when the shops are shut for 3 months, what the manufacturers to do, what these B2B businesses, where do they go? They've still got a factory out in China. They're producing products. Like, where do they go with it? So I definitely think more B2B business you'll see will start and go direct. And again, that's potentially an issue for the high street in itself. The high street is becoming a tough place to trade in anyway. But then if B2B businesses start going direct, then it's difficult for a lot of the retailers. I don't think more businesses will transition online to get people to go through the stores, through the doors, and people. There's still a bit of I've been on the high street the last week or so, and it is pretty dead out there still. I think that you're going to see more of that. Again, the small businesses getting online. I think, again, we talk about the in-store experience online. I think that's where retailers really have to start. If they want to compete, they really need to start offering that and making that journey as personalized as possible, as seamless as possible. Seamless is a word we use a lot at Space48. Again, it needs to be easy for the customer to go and make that purchase, and removing kind of all the barriers. couple of things we started seeing, like just technology wise, it's maybe whether the fads or not, I don't know. Like video chat, obviously most people now are used to using Zoom, even to speak to their friends or family. I've started to see a lot more video chat popping up now on a lot of e-commerce platforms. Again, people are kind of used to that video interaction now, whereas before they might have been put off by it. Definitely more use of AR and 3D. Again, I keep talking about it. AR has been talked about now for a couple of years. I'm definitely seeing more of that, and it's definitely ties into that, bringing the in-store experience online. And I think there's going to be a big investment now in terms of retention strategies. So maybe increased use of like loyalty schemes, programs that can reward customers to keep coming back to them. They're probably the things that I'll definitely see. And in terms of investment in strategy, I think a lot of businesses heavily invest in acquisition. And I think now you probably start seeing the same levels of investment go into actual retention and actual the online experience. Actually, once the customers actually get to the platform and the e-commerce site, it's where the money's going to be spent there in terms of, again, making that journey as seamless as possible.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And then I guess, Todd, from your perspective, it's going to be a slightly different answer because it's going to be more focused on technology, trends of the technology, and where you think that is going to be moving and how that's going to be supporting clients, not only in a B2B, in a B2C perspective, but also in a B2B perspective. Yeah, is there anything you can share around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Pete covered B2C very well. So I as he was speaking, I figured I'd cover the B2B portion. I think this is it's fresh ground for them. It's an unbeaten path for the B2B folks. And the hard part for them over the course of the next few years is they have thousands of products and they have no clue how to sell them to other businesses without that in-person, sales experience. So you've got a fairly large, a very steep learning curve for some of these larger businesses. But what's really cool about the software that's out there and this ability to do, a visual configuration, the chance to slow roll or to not bite off the entire piece, to do one product at a time, to get this out to the businesses that you are selling to, is really kind of the key portion, right? Don't try to overdo it. Don't try to boil the ocean. Every metaphor and every phrase you can think of. But the idea is you already have product photography. You already have knowledge out there in the world. Replacing one at a time is really the way to go, right? That way you can get that experience out to, the businesses you're selling to. And even more importantly, the dealer selling approach. A lot of these B2B customers use a dealer selling or some type of distributor-based selling process. Getting these visuals out one at a time is much better than trying to do everything at once, because everybody is going to be trying to get into this online selling experience. They're just not quite sure how to do it, but you don't need to do everything at once. It's really a enhanced visuals, enhanced visual configuration is an enhancer of your selling process. It doesn't have to be your only way to sell.
Perfect, thank you. And we've had a question come in from Paul Casey, so thank you, Paul. And the question is, do you think we would be able to show customers 3D and AR of the e-commerce store into marketing? So being able to have it in social, in campaign work, and also maybe broadening this question into more of an omni-channel experience.
I'll field this one, and Pete, feel free to add after. The answer, Paul, to your question is yes. I already have a number of customers who are including 3D in their marketing. You can various publishing across their online experience. So not just in one place, like a configurator or something like that, or design your own, but advertising it on the front page of their website. And then the social sharing aspect, it's already there. So just kind of depends on how you want to use it. Some customers like doing social sharing for advertising. Other customers like to give their consumers the ability to social share with their friends or relatives or other businesses that they're working with. So it's already here. And I think it's going to only grow with social sharing the products you've purchased.
I'd agree with that. In terms of, sorry, Katie.
Please go for it.
In terms of like social, I can't see it being too long before things like Instagram are supporting like being able to view products, directly on your mobile into your, supporting AR Google obviously already support AR for a lot of, it kind of is a bit of a niche thing they do at the moment for like, for example, you can search for animals and view them in AR. I don't see it being too long before Google start offering this an enhancement to Google Shopping where you can literally grab the product in Google Shopping and just basically view what it looks like without even having to visit the e-commerce store. I know there's Google are looking at things in the future where they have their own kind of marketplace and you won't even have to visit an e-commerce platform anymore. It's literally, you're going to buy in straight from their search. So I can't see it being too far away. I might be wrong, but in a year's time, let's see where we're at.
I think you're right. Facebook is already doing it as well. I mean, you can see products in AR directly in Facebook. That's already one platform, but I agree with you. Instagram's not far behind, and who knows what's next after that. But.
Perfect. And that kind of springs another component that came to top of mind is around when we look at scalability. One of the key benefits that could be an outcome is, a reduction in cost of not having to manufacture goods unless a client actually, potentially wants them. Perhaps Todd or Pete, you could, highlight a little bit more around that or some of the other benefits that you see from projects that you've worked on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can go first. I mean, certainly from a scalability perspective, establishing what you can and cannot manufacture is huge, right? Like you can't be wrong there. I mean, Pete was touching on it earlier, right? Like the object is still in motion in a purchasing process when it hits the back end of a company's system. And so it has to be correct as it goes through the operational portion. What's really great about that is as you automate this sort of thing, and you reduce your errors, for all intents and purposes, your goal is to make this buying experience error proof. And then what you start to see is really, you reap the results on the back end, which is far less returns, which is really kind of good for everybody. The customers are happier, more retention, repeat buying, right? And not only that, but it's, kind of good for the environment as well, right? You have less emissions, less returns, less waste. So, all in all, creating something that is automated, it is error proof from start to finish, all the way through to the end of the process is really that's really the goal.
Brilliant. Pete, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think really we touched on this earlier on in terms of the efficiencies that can be gained. Like I said before, retailers just want to sell. They don't want to be dealing with the back office issues. And I think automation is a huge part of what retailers will need going forward. So yeah, I guess I've got nothing else to add to that. I think Todd covered that pretty well.
Okay, great.
I was piggybacking off of what you said earlier. So,
well, that's what this discussion is all about. So we've got just a couple more minutes left. I'm mindful of time for everyone. So if you do have any last questions, feel free to post them. But perhaps before any last questions come in, Pete, over to yourself. Are there any last words that you might like to share for success of a new digital strategy?
I guess I kind of touched on it. I can't reiterate it enough. It's just, again, look at the data you've got available to you when you're looking at making decisions. Listen to what your customers are telling you, because they're the two. I don't like listening to people that make decisions based on feelings anymore. If I ever go into a meeting with people and they turn around and say, "I think," that really worries me. I always like ask people to back up the decisions they make. We like to challenge our customers at Space48 when they come to us with a new idea or new technology. Yeah, most of the time it's a great idea, but we will always push back and ask for where's the research to kind of back this up. So I can't recommend looking at data points. You've got to collect as much data as you possibly can at every single touch point in the journey. You never know you're going to need it. It can be it can prove invaluable later on. The worst thing you want to be able to do is then come to make a decision at some point and you don't have the data available when you could have been collecting it 6-12 months ago. So yeah, collect as much data as possible, listen to your customers, and don't make decisions based on what you think.
Brilliant. Very wise words. And Todd, perhaps some final wise words from yourself.
I don't know how I can be.
How do you top that?
I don't.
Beautifully articulated.
I can't. I was thinking, as Pete was talking, I was thinking, trust the trends. Nobody knows what's going on in the world today and how it's changing and how it's going to affect us over the course of time. And, to me, I've always kind of seen human beings as creatures of habit. And those habits are changing. And, we're not quite sure where it'll go, but, the need and desire for a comforting experience, I think will always be there. It just may need to be comforting in the comfort of your own home.
So I think, you know, if I were to summarize I think the number one word that has probably been shared throughout this fireside chat has been all about experience. So the more that you can provide that experience, the more you can provide that automation as well for your internal team. That is probably the key two aspects to summarize for success. So with that being said, unless anyone has any other questions, I would like to thank both Pete and Todd for your participation today. I believe a recording will be shared to all participants. So if you did want to refer back to it, you would be most welcome to. And we would obviously love to support any further discussions with anyone if it's of interest, but we appreciate your time today and thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you everyone that's turned up today. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.